Welcome to Haunted Talks, the official podcast of the Haunted Walk, offering ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, Ontario, and online experiences to anyone in this mortal realm. My name is Jim Dean. I am the creative director, and it is my privilege to be your haunted host for this episode. Two weeks ago, we shared 3 chilling mysteries. Real people caught in the middle of strange events that captured public attention through the media. Each one of these stories happened to real people, in real places, and most witnesses blamed the ghosts. Unsuspecting observers became convinced they had experienced real paranormal activity. However, of the 3 stories we shared, 2 of them were carefully constructed hoaxes, dreamt up by clever individuals intent on fooling the public. What may have started as mischief or harmless fun left lasting impacts on communities and people, sparking debates that still blur the line between truth and fiction. If you haven't listened to the previous episode yet, we highly recommend going back and giving it a listen. It sets the stage for everything we're about to uncover. In our episode today, we will share with you the backstory of each haunting and see how many of you were able to correctly guess which 2, in fact, were hoaxes. And at the end of the episode, we will draw a winner from everyone who entered to see who gets the Haunted Talks t-shirt and 2 tickets for any of our ghost tours in Kingston, Ottawa, or Toronto. But before we get to that, we're at that scary part of the summer where the days seem to be flying by too fast. But at the same time, that can only mean one thing: spooky season draws near. If you're trying to make the most of your summer while the warm nights last, join us for a ghost tour or paranormal adventure in Kingston, Ottawa, or Toronto, Ontario. My 3 hidden gems for this summer are Ghosts of the Village at Black Creek in Toronto, Tales from the Mausoleum at Beechwood Cemetery in Ottawa, and the Ghosts of Queen's University in Kingston. Each offers a unique setting, fascinating stories, and more than a few chills. And a little secret to share: most of our Halloween season tickets are already on sale, and the rest will be very soon. For tickets and more eerie info, please visit hauntedwalk.com and be sure to use the promo code Haunted Talks at checkout to save 15% on most tickets. We also have a few surprises and big announcements up our sleeve, so this is the perfect time to keep an eye on the Haunted Walk on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Blue Sky, all at Haunted Walk. And now, let's reveal the hoaxes. Let's quickly recap the 3 stories before the grand reveal. The first tale took us to a small city where a family was plagued by eerie moaning noises echoing through their home. Neighbors became curious, then obsessed. People lined up to hear it for themselves, convinced the sound was coming from under the floorboards. But no one could explain it. The second story was about a group of reporters who were sent out to investigate a poltergeist case in a sleepy suburb of a major city. During a live broadcast, they were horrified to witness an unexplained ramp-up of activity both within and outside the home. In fact, people calling in to the live program were reporting similar terrifying incidents miles away. The broadcast was cut short as an entire nation hit a fever pitch, but not before bringing a massive audience to the edges of their seats. And our third story centered on a mysterious woman in white, seen drifting near a cemetery, hovering over a school, and tapping on bedroom windows. She was spotted by dozens of witnesses, even as paranormal investigators searched for answers, and the local economy embraced the ghost as a tourist draw. So, which were the hoaxes? The second story, the broadcast that unraveled into a panic, was in fact a hoax. 69% of you guessed correctly. Well done. This is perhaps one of the most well-known paranormal hoaxes out there, and we couldn't resist including it, as it left a massive impact on both the television industry and paranormal research. You may have recognized something almost timeless about this story, a mass hysteria kicked off by a fake broadcast that felt too real for most listeners. It certainly recalls other famous live broadcast hoaxes, like the infamous War of the Worlds radio show by Orson Welles in 1938, where people became convinced that aliens were invading the Earth. Something about using the voice of authority to trick an audience in real time has a certain appeal to hoaxers. Here's what really happened. Everything about this story, from start to finish, was an elaborate setup sprung upon a very unsuspecting audience. The stunt was a show called Ghost Watch, a mockumentary produced by the BBC for their Halloween special in 1992, broadcast nationwide during prime time. More observant or skeptical viewers might have noticed a few clues. It aired during a regular drama slot. It was Halloween night. Suspicious maybe, but most people were completely unaware that a national prank was unfolding. There was no clear warning that the program was fictional. The reveal only came after it aired. It was constructed just like a real documentary, starring news reporters familiar to the CBC audience, including Michael Parkinson, one of the most famous British news personalities at that time. Even today, Ghost Watch still holds up. If you don't know it's fake, it plays out like a standard paranormal investigation, eerily convincing from beginning to end. The premise of the documentary, a live investigation of a poltergeist, feels more familiar today. But in 1992, it was a novel concept. In reality, the entire program was pre-recorded, and every moment was scripted. Yes, even the poltergeist. The family at the center of the story, the Earlys, were actors, playing their roles with convincing fear and desperation. To avoid drawing attention to a real neighborhood, the BBC used a fictional street name and fabricated residents. Fox Hill Drive, where the haunting supposedly took place, didn't exist. But in a sprawling city like London, without internet or GPS fact-checking, no one questioned it. Viewers watched broadcast intently, many assuming they were witnessing real events unfolding in a quiet London suburb. The live call-in portion of the show was also pre-recorded and scripted. The phone number displayed on the screen for the public simply led to an endless busy signal. As the broadcasters encouraged more people to call in, They proclaimed that so many calls were being received that they were jamming the phone lines. And, as you might expect, that only made more people call in. The BBC later confirmed their phone lines were indeed flooded on the night of the broadcast as people frantically tried to get through. The pre-recorded documentary gave the illusion that some members of the public were able to reach the program, but these were just pre-recorded actors reading from a script. The public participation angle was a new twist to live media hoaxes, and it partially explains why Ghost Watch has endured in the minds of so many. Decades later, the incident feels almost humorous. For the BBC documentary team, Ghost Watch was a tongue-in-cheek prank, a clever jab at the public that turned into a wildly successful stunt. It proved that if you add a few credentials and cast convincing actors, you can make almost anyone believe nearly anything. The backlash was swift. The incident sparked a national conversation about the responsibilities of journalists and other trusted voices in the media. Long before fake news became part of our vocabulary, Ghostwatch had already forced people to confront the uncomfortable truth. Just because it looks real doesn't mean it is. Following the original airing, it was reported that many people had terrifying nightmares for weeks and even months afterwards. There are documented cases of some needing psychiatric treatment due to the trauma it caused. Others faced a long road ahead with PTSD treatments, still convinced that the incidents were real. Even one suicide was attributed to the fallout from the Ghost Watch episode. The controversy lasted years, which was the mockumentary's primary goal. People didn't want to really tune in again, though. They were too scared, and the long version of the show has never been re-released on the BBC, although you can still find the entire program and plenty of clips online. There's even a cult-like following who watch the show regularly during a national seance. The impact of this hoax is still being felt. The BBC spent years defending the idea, claiming that discerning viewers could tell the story was fiction. But that was the problem. It was carefully constructed to seem real, without any clear disclaimer. Future mockumentaries changed their approach, and as a result, fictional aspects now tend to be more carefully identified. But that hasn't always sharpened the blur between truth and fiction. Take the Blair Witch Project. Conceived just a year after Ghost Watch. The film claimed to present raw, uncut, found footage. And although audiences were explicitly told it was fictional, many still believed the story was real. Some even ventured into the woods hoping to uncover the truth for themselves. Both Ghost Watch and the Blair Witch tapped into something primal, something buried deep in the human psyche. Paranormal documentaries reach into our oldest fears, and while some people run from them, others run straight towards the darkness. Now let's reveal the second hoax. This one may have been a little tougher to spot. Only 44% of you picked it as one of your two guesses, making it the least suspected of the three stories. And yet, it was a fabrication. As we'll soon see, it truly is a bizarre story. The second deliberate hoax was the third story we presented, the woman in white who appeared throughout a quiet district. At least some of those eerie sightings were completely fabricated, part of an elaborate stunt. The hoaxers admitted to most of the major incidences, and even some witnesses were in on the plan. But interestingly, they didn't take credit for all the encounters. It's likely they unintentionally sparked a wave of hysteria, one that swept through the small community and left everyone on edge. The real events unfolded in 1920 in Tonawanda, New York, a northern suburb of Buffalo. The community, split into two separate towns, was nestled between Buffalo to the south and Niagara Falls to the north, along the scenic west shore of the Niagara River. In the 1920s, Tonawanda was a fashionable and growing district with a budding industrial sector conveniently located near river and rail lines. Its proximity to major destinations made it attractive, but it still maintained a small-town feel, close-knit, familiar, and rooted in trust. Much like the Ghost Watch episode, the unsuspecting residents of Tonawanda had no idea their phantom sightings were part of a carefully staged media stunt. Not until the story had fully taken hold. Neither the curious locals, reading daily updates in their newspapers, nor the ghost hunters who descended on the town suspected that the whole thing was an elaborate political scheme, carefully orchestrated by members of the town's elite. The truth came to light on June 13th, 1921. A group of concerned residents, some of them armed, set out to confront the mystery once and for all. They gathered at the local cemetery where many of the sightings had occurred. As they watched, a cloud of smoke drifted across the gravestones, and through the haze, ghostly shapes began to take form, slowly, into the shape of a woman in white, floating about 2 feet off the ground. Before anyone could react, the ghost did something no one expected. It began to speak. What happened next was less spooky and more ridiculous. The ghost began urging the crowd to vote yes in an upcoming referendum. The proposal on the table? To consolidate the two communities of Tonawanda and North Tonawanda into a single city. Business owners were applauding the proposal and pushing it forward, excited to see their larger community have more influence in New York's growing economy. While most of the town's elites were urging people to vote yes, most residents were skeptical, and the motion appeared doomed. People worried about losing their local identity, about diminished voices in government, and the practical challenges of merging two distinct communities. After all, Tonawanda and North Tonawanda had a long-standing rivalry, and cooperation was not exactly their strong suit. So, the North Tonawanda Chamber of Commerce hatched a plan. Create a stir around a supposed ghost sighting and drum up the media for assistance. After the idea caught fire, and hopefully the two communities came together searching for answers, the ghost could implore its audience to make the right choice and vote for consolidation. And for a while, it worked. People from both Tonawandas were captivated. Visitors flooded in, bringing their curiosity and their money. The woman in white became a local celebrity, and sightings spread like wildfire, fueling the story far beyond city limits. But then came the big reveal, and instead of awe or clarity, it brought something else entirely: disappointment. It's unclear from the newspaper coverage just how much local reporters were in on the hoax, but one thing is certain: the press benefited the most. They sold a lot of papers and openly admitted to fanning the flames of the phantom to boost circulation and promote local tourism. Meanwhile, rumors swirled that the chief of police was also involved, or at the very least, complicit. In the end, it fell to him to break the news and explain the hoax to an understandably angry public. But did this plan work? In short, no. The vote failed miserably. Just days after the ghost's true intentions were revealed, the townspeople made their feelings clear. They weren't buying it. The motion was swiftly defeated as long-standing rivalries resurfaced, and both communities firmly rejected the idea of merging. Whether the ghost stunt pushed more people to vote no is hard to say, but the result was decisive. The town had spoken. In the aftermath, the newspaper lamented that Tonawandans would never believe in ghosts again, conveniently ignoring their own role in fueling the hoax. For all the excitement in the spring of 1920, the fame the phantom brought was short-lived. The story had reached across the US and even made international headlines. But the reveal? That barely registered. Once the truth came out, most people simply rolled their eyes, gave a collective groan, and moved on. But there's one lingering caveat. Not all of the ghostly encounters in Tonawanda were staged by the Chamber of Commerce. Remember the family driven from their home by a phantom in the bedroom? That wasn't part of the plan. And the glowing figure spotted outside a bedroom window? Also not claimed by the hoaxers. So, is there still a kernel of truth in these accounts? Perhaps people swept up in the excitement became more attuned to strange happenings, seeing things they might normally overlook. There's evidence that heightened awareness can make people more likely to notice or believe unusual events. But there's also evidence that mass hysteria can grip a community, creating false reports and feeding wild imaginations. In the end, it's impossible to fully separate the hoax from anything genuinely paranormal. The Chamber of Commerce may have unwittingly created the perfect cover story for actual ghosts. So we've come to the final story, the one that most of you believed was a hoax. In fact, 88% of listeners guessed that the strange moaning noises under the floorboards were part of a clever deception. I'm sad to say, there was no elaborate scheme, no intention to trick the public. The family at the heart of the story didn't fabricate anything to draw in crowds. If anything, the small financial gain they received was just a silver lining in an otherwise stressful experience. That said, we do have to admit to a small deception of our own. This story wasn't a hoax, but it's not exactly a ghost story either. The events took place in Bristol, Tennessee in 1921. The local Godsey family were exactly as described. A wholesome, unassuming family living an ordinary life in a folksy Appalachian city. They were genuinely perplexed by the noises in their home and curious about the real cause. As reported in the media, the family and local residents weren't entirely convinced it was ghosts, but had no other plausible explanations either. They were mostly concerned with finding the mysterious noise's source, getting rid of it, and continuing to live their peaceful lives. What raised a few eyebrows about the case was the unexpected financial boost the family received. After all, streams of curious visitors with money in their pockets began to show up at their door. But despite any benefit, the Godseys seemed genuinely exhausted by the attention. Eventually, after weeks of constant disruption and speculation, a proper investigation was launched. The property was closed to the public, and the police were brought in. Investigators, of the non-paranormal variety, spent days in the home, tearing up floorboards, opening walls, and digging through the foundation. And that's when they found the real culprit: rats. The source of those deep, unsettling moans beneath the floorboards? A massive rat nest, home to over 250 adult rodents. No one had suspected something like this. The family later said they saw a rat here and there, just like any other urban household, but it wasn't anything out of the ordinary, and the quantity was never alarming. It was baffling that so many rats could remain relatively hidden and confined. There were no reports of rat hordes leaving the Godsey home, and rodents were never suspected by the countless visitors that streamed in. The truly terrifying part of this mystery was the sound itself. Those deep, anguished moans, like a woman in severe pain. Could a rat nest really produce that kind of sustained, human-like noise for weeks on end? Some speculated that another animal might have been involved, perhaps wounded or dying somewhere on the property. Others wondered if a second nest was connected through underground tunnels, amplifying the sound in strange and unsettling ways. Horrifying possibilities all around. Even with the unanswered questions, the explanation seemed to fit, at least on the surface. The moaning was the only widely reported phenomenon in the home, and while the Godseys may not have had a ghost problem, what they did have was arguably just as terrifying. Unlike the big eye roll that followed the reveal in Tonawanda, the resolution of the Bristol mystery captured genuine attention. The newspaper article detailing the discovery spread far and wide. People were invested in learning the truth. At first, the story read like a bit of dark humor. Crowds had traveled for miles hoping to witness a ghost, only to discover the source was a massive rat infestation. But as the article continued, the tone shifted. There was still a lingering sense of mystery. Even the local media seemed unconvinced. They fixated on one detail. No one had seen any substantial signs of rats until the nest was finally unearthed. And then, not long after the article was published, the family's patriarch spoke up. The strange events, he claimed, weren't over. Things were still happening in the house. So maybe, just maybe, this was a ghost story after all. A nest of over 250 rats would be enough to terrify any family, but perhaps there was more to the story. Mr. Godsey wasn't convinced the noises could be explained away so easily. The rats had supposedly been exterminated, yet the strange sounds continued. His family, he said, were preparing to leave the house for good. Whatever was happening, they didn't want to stick around to find out. He pushed back on the idea that the rats were the sole cause of the disturbances, almost offended by the suggestion. Most of the noises, he insisted, didn't match what you would expect from rodents. And beyond the sounds, there had been other unexplained occurrences that he didn't get into. Whatever it was still happening. Rather than continue living in the spotlight, or in the shadow of whatever lingered in the home, the Godsey family decided to walk away. So this story was certainly not a hoax. No one suspected the Godseys of pulling off a phantom scheme, especially after the incident drove them out of their home. But we did deceive you a little bit, because maybe this isn't a ghost story either. In fact, some may argue it's an ongoing, perplexing mystery with some other explanation that will probably never be fully uncovered. While the rat's nest was the source of the moans offered by the police, there were more than a few people left unconvinced. Stories like this erode the already blurry line between truth and fiction. It makes us question the stories we tell and why we believe them. Do hoaxes close our mind to the unexplained, convincing us that every mystery has a tidy answer? Or do they open us up, heightening our senses and sharpening our curiosity? Ultimately, that's for you, our listeners, to decide. These stories remind us that mystery lives not just in haunted houses or strange sightings, but in the very way we interpret the world around us. What we believe and why shapes how we experience the unknown. Now a little reward for your detective work. It's time to draw our winner. It was overwhelming to hear from so many of you. We received entries from across Ontario, all over Canada and the US, and even one from Hungary. Having such an interested and dedicated audience is what makes doing this show so much fun for us. And thank you for being a part of it. And now, Michelle, if we could get a drum roll, please. The winner of a Haunted Talks t-shirt and 2 tickets for any of our ghost tours in Kingston, Ottawa, or Toronto is Karen Gold, listening in Ottawa. Congratulations. We'll be reaching out to you to arrange delivery of your prize and your spooky night out. Thanks again to everyone who played along. We loved reading your theories, and remember, whether it's fact, fiction, or something in between, curiosity is always the key to unlock the doors of our imaginations. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. For information on our ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, please visit hauntedwalk.com. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review Haunted Talks wherever you listen. As always, a special thanks to our hard-working Haunted Talks team, including our outstanding audio editor, Michelle Dennis, and Brittany Boss, who researched, wrote, and helped me scheme our own little hoax. Until we meet again, try not to imagine a huge rat infestation under your place. And sweet dreams.